Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we begin an immersive and deeply detailed journey into the Jefferson nickel, a coin that has circulated through American hands for more than 8 decades and carries within its copper-nickel surface an entire story of national identity, wartime necessity, artistic evolution, political symbolism, and the quiet power of everyday money. And as we explore this coin from its earliest conception, you will feel how a simple 5-cent piece became a living archive of American history, starting with the moment when the United States Mint decided that it was time to replace the beloved Buffalo nickel, a coin that had been praised for its beauty yet criticized for being notoriously difficult to strike. And by the late 1930s, the Mint needed something modern, something technically efficient, and something that symbolized a forward-looking America, which ultimately led them to Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, whose influence on the structure of American democracy, diplomacy, science, and architecture made him a powerful figure to represent on national currency, and the Mint believed that honoring Jefferson on the nickel would create a coin deeply connected to intellect, statesmanship, and American innovation. And so in 1938, as the Buffalo nickel's era approached its end, the government organized a public design competition offering a modest cash prize but enormous prestige to the winning artist, attracting the attention of sculptors across the country eager to leave their mark on American coinage. Yet it was the shy and relatively unknown German-American artist Felix Schlag who ultimately won the competition with a design that conveyed elegance, balance, and historical gravitas, presenting Jefferson in a left-facing portrait that intentionally leaned toward classical sculpture traditions while placing Monticello, Jefferson's iconic Virginia estate, on the reverse as a symbol of Jefferson's architectural passion and philosophical depth. And Schlag's original design had to be modified by the Mint due to concerns about legibility and practicality. But even after adjustments, the coin remained unmistakably his, launching into circulation in late 1938 and instantly becoming a daily part of American commerce, traveling through pockets during World War II, passing through the hands of factory workers contributing to wartime industry, and circulating among families navigating economic hardship and recovery, all while serving as a quiet reminder of Jefferson's legacy. And this era would soon transform the Jefferson nickel in a dramatic way because by 1942 the United States faced critical shortages of nickel metal needed to build tanks, aircraft, and military equipment, forcing the Mint to alter the coin's composition into what became known as the war nickel, made from an unusual mixture of silver, manganese, and copper, making it the only 5-cent piece in American history ever struck with silver. And because wartime production required quick visual identification, the Mint added a large mint mark above Monticello's dome, much larger than normal mint marks, creating some of today's most collectible varieties. And once the war ended, the coin gradually returned to its standard composition. But by that point, the Jefferson nickel had firmly established itself as an American icon that had adapted to national crises while still honoring Jefferson and Monticello. And as the decades passed, the design continued to travel through millions of hands, carrying with it the story of a nation in constant evolution, moving through the prosperity of the 1950s, the social transformations of the 1960s, the inflation battles of the 1970s, and the technological expansions of the 1980s and 1990s, until finally the 2000s brought a major redesign that expanded Jefferson's portrait and modernized Monticello, ensuring the nickel remained relevant for future generations. And throughout all of this, the Jefferson nickel became not just a coin but a reflection of changing eras, evolving engraving techniques, shifting artistic standards, and America's ongoing relationship with its founding fathers. And today collectors continue to study its mint marks, its wartime compositions, its early dye varieties, its transition year nuances, and its modern redesign choices, all while appreciating how a single 5-cent coin can hold more history and emotional weight than most people ever stop to consider, proving that sometimes the smallest denominations carry the biggest stories. Continuing the deep journey into the Jefferson nickel, the story expands into the years following its introduction, when America was entering a new era of industrial growth, cultural change, and global responsibility, all of which shaped how this coin circulated and evolved. And as the 1930s closed and the nation moved into the 1940s, the Jefferson nickel became one of the most widely used denominations in daily life because 5 cents had genuine purchasing power, allowing Americans to buy newspapers, snacks, postage, and basic goods, meaning Jefferson's portrait and the image of Monticello became fixtures in American pockets, symbolizing stability during unstable times. And with the outbreak of World War II, when resources tightened and economic pressures grew, the nickel's story became intertwined with wartime strategies as citizens everywhere unknowingly handled coins that represented a nation's struggle to ration materials for survival. And long before the war nickels made of silver were introduced, the Mint was already studying the rising costs, shortages, and distribution pressures that would affect production. and this background set the stage for one of the most unusual chapters in American coinage. But beyond the war itself, the Jefferson nickel gained cultural significance as Jefferson's face became a familiar sight that reminded Americans of leadership rooted in reason, diplomacy, and intellectual courage, and Felix Schlag's portrait, though altered from his original submission, captured a sense of calm strength that resonated with a country moving through uncertainty, and while the design was widely accepted, there were still critics who claimed the portrait lacked the boldness of earlier coins like the Buffalo nickel, yet it was precisely the simplicity and clean balance of the Jefferson nickel that allowed it to endure for more than 6 decades with only minimal modifications, which is a rare achievement in U.S. currency history, and as decades passed, millions of coins poured out of the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, with each facility developing subtle differences in strike quality and die characteristics that collectors would later study with fascination, and it became clear that the Jefferson nickel was more than a replacement for the Buffalo nickel. It was a long-term national symbol that captured America's appreciation for Thomas Jefferson's contributions, particularly his authorship of the Declaration of Independence and his expansionist vision that shaped the nation's early structure. And as Americans moved through the 1950s and 1960s, a time of economic growth and social restructuring, the nickel remained constant in people's daily routines, exchanged in diners, bus stations, grocery stores, movie theaters, and gas pumps, forming a subtle but intimate bond with everyday American life. And even though inflation began to change the value of money, reducing the purchasing power of 5 cents, the Jefferson nickel retained emotional value, partly because it represented heritage and partly because of its durable, recognizable design. And as the 1970s and 1980s arrived, coin collectors began paying closer attention to early dates, war nickels, full-step Monticello strikes, and rare die varieties, elevating the nickel from a simple pocket coin to an object of numismatic study. Yet despite its artistic and historical significance, the U.S. Mint recognized that the design needed modernization by the early 2000s, especially as engraving technology advanced and public interest shifted toward more sculptural, detailed imagery, leading to the development of the new westward journey designs that briefly replaced Monticello before the modernized Jefferson portrait and updated Monticello reverse were introduced in 2006, marking a fresh chapter for the coin while preserving its original purpose. And this redesign carried Jefferson into the 21st century with a more realistic, forward-facing portrait that symbolized progress and renewed national pride, proving that even after decades, the Jefferson nickel could evolve without losing its identity. And as collectors today analyze everything from strike sharpness to composition changes, from early die cracks to subtle variations in the steps of Monticello, they continue to appreciate how the Jefferson nickel reflects American innovation, resilience, and a dedication to honoring foundational leaders, revealing that beneath its simple 5-cent value lies a complex, dynamic legacy that spans art, politics, economics, war, and national unity. As we move deeper into the world of the Jefferson nickel, the focus now shifts toward its intricate design elements, evolving artistic details, physical characteristics, and the technical craftsmanship that allowed this coin to remain one of the longest-running designs in American numismatic history, beginning with the original 1938 portrait that Felix Schlag created, a profile of Thomas Jefferson that was meant to capture not only his likeness but also his intellectual presence, his philosophical depth, and his immense contributions to the nation. And although Schlag's initial design was more artistic and sculptural in style, the Mint requested adjustments so the final version had a smoother, more practical appearance suitable for mass production, featuring Jefferson facing left, the first time an American president's portrait would be positioned in that direction on U.S. coinage, and surrounding the portrait, the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust were carefully placed to maintain symmetry without overwhelming the central image, while the reverse showcased Monticello, Jefferson's famous architectural masterpiece, engraved with precision and minimalism. And it was here, on the steps of Monticello, where collectors would later judge one of the most important strike characteristics in the entire series, the full steps designation, which refers to the visibility and sharpness of the staircase leading to Monticello's entrance, a detail that became the holy grail for many collectors because early Jefferson nickels were notoriously difficult to strike with enough pressure to fully display these delicate lines, and only the best-struck examples from certain years exhibit these full steps cleanly, making them significantly more valuable. And as the Mint experimented with dyes, pressure, and metal compositions, subtle changes in Monticello's appearance occurred, from the thickness of its pillars to the curve of its dome and the clarity of the lettering, each variation now studied by collectors who examine the differences between early and late die states with magnification, and the physical composition of the coin itself, initially 75% copper and 25% nickel, was chosen for durability, affordability, and resistance to wear, allowing the Jefferson nickel to maintain its appearance even after decades of circulation. And yet this composition underwent a historic transformation during World War II when the United States needed large amounts of nickel metal to build military equipment, forcing the mint to create the famous silver alloy known as the wartime composition, consisting of copper, silver, and manganese, which gave the coins a unique look and feel, slightly duller and lighter than regular nickels, and these wartime coins also introduced oversized mint marks placed above Monticello's dome. The first time the Philadelphia Mint used a mint mark on any coin, making this era one of the most historically significant in the series, and once the war ended the original copper-nickel composition returned, but collectors could forever distinguish the wartime nickels due to their distinct metal makeup and bold mint marks, and throughout the 1950s and 1960s the U.S. Mint worked to improve die longevity and consistency, which resulted in slight shifts in design sharpness from year to year, while engravers carefully maintained Schlag's original artistic intent even as modern machinery gradually replaced older minting practices, and the coin's dimensions, 21.2 millimeters in diameter and weighing exactly 5 grams, remained unchanged, making the Jefferson nickel one of the most stable denominations in terms of physical specifications, and as America continued to modernize, the mint recognized the importance of updating Jefferson's image, which eventually led to the early 2000s redesigns that temporarily replaced Monticello with new reverse themes connected to the Lewis and Clark expedition during the Westward Journey nickel program, and although these temporary reverses were short-lived, they breathed new life into the series and allowed Americans to experience Jefferson in a different historical context, showing him not only as a founding father but also as a visionary leader who helped push America toward exploration and discovery. And eventually, in 2006, the Jefferson Nickel received its first major permanent transformation in decades, presenting a new forward-facing portrait of Jefferson that felt more lifelike, expressive, and bold, symbolizing a modern interpretation of his character while returning Monticello to the reverse in a sharper, more detailed format that captured architectural lines with improved precision thanks to digital engraving technology. And all these changes, from compositions to portraits to mintmark styles, tell the story of a coin that has not only survived but evolved with the nation, serving as a physical timeline of American history preserved in metal, allowing collectors to study each era with appreciation for the engravers, artists, machinists, and historians who helped shape the Jefferson Nickel into one of the most enduring and technically fascinating coins ever produced by the United States Mint. Diving deeper into the world of Jefferson Nickels, this section continues exploring even more rare dates, strange die events, and unusual production quirks that have transformed ordinary 5-cent pieces into highly desirable collectibles. And understanding these lesser-known discoveries helps coin collectors appreciate how unpredictable the journey of a nickel can be from the moment a metal planchet enters the coining chamber to the moment a finished piece lands in circulation, because every flaw, slip, misalignment, or unintentional change during minting becomes a historical fingerprint that can dramatically elevate the value of certain Jefferson nickels. And beginning with the expanding list of mid-century anomalies, the 1949 D/S over mintmark variety stands as one of the more intriguing cases where the Denver mintmark was punched over an earlier San Francisco mintmark, revealing clear traces of the underlying S when examined under magnification. And although this variety was minted after the era when hand-punching mintmarks was slowly being phased out, the surviving examples still capture a transitional moment in minting history, and collectors who can identify the subtle upward curve of the remaining S beneath the D often hold a coin worth far more than its face value, with premium uncirculated examples commanding strong value in auctions, while the 1954 S repunched mintmark is another mid-century treasure, known for its visibly doubled S that protrudes from the shadow of the earlier punch, and this coin continues to surprise graders because many pieces remained in rolls for decades before being discovered, making high-grade specimens remarkably well preserved. But moving ahead to the later years of the series, the 1964 double die obverse and double die reverse are two overlooked sleepers, minted during a year of extremely high production as the United States dealt with widespread coin shortages, leading to hurried die preparation and thus unintentional doubling. And although the doubling is not as dramatic as seen on certain pennies or quarters, Jefferson's lips, hairlines, or portions of the Monticello lettering show noticeable spread that significantly appeals to specialists, and this same year also produced numerous die cracks, cuds, and late-stage die breaks because dies were overused during that production boom. And these features can create raised lines across Jefferson's portrait or chipped corners on Monticello, forming miniature islands of metal that collectors call cuds, which are popular error types due to their uniqueness. And moving further into the 1970s, the 1971 no mintmark nickel from Philadelphia became the focus of a subtle but important design quirk involving unusually strong strikes and sharply defined details, and while not a traditional error, these pieces stand out in high grade due to a brief period when new press adjustments improved the strike quality, and the 1975 and 1976 nickels produced a modest increase in die polishing errors, resulting in coins where certain details of the steps on Monticello are overly smooth or faded, creating a visual appearance almost like a weak strike. And although not traditionally high value, the best preserved versions of these polishing anomalies still attract specialist interest, and the 1980s introduced a new wave of collectible anomalies, particularly the 1981 P-filled mint mark where the P is partially clogged with grease or metal debris, creating a rounded, swollen, or nearly missing appearance, and collectors enjoy this type of error because grease-filled dies can affect multiple numbers or letters across the coin, producing a coin that looks faint, ghost-like, or partially blank in certain areas, and the 1982 and 1983 issues, already known for generally weaker strikes during a period of mint transition, often show planchet impurities and strike softness that make full steps very difficult to locate, making any sharp examples automatically more valuable, especially in higher MS grades. And speaking of full steps, a major area of collector excitement includes chasing the most elusive full-step Jefferson Nickels from the mid-1980s through early 1990s, because despite technological improvements at the mint, many coins from these years inexplicably lack crisp stare detail due to worn dies, improper planchet hardness, or suboptimal press calibration. So high-grade full-step examples from 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989, and 1990 often sell for astonishing premiums in certified holders, sometimes reaching four-figure prices simply due to the extreme scarcity of perfect strikes. And continuing toward the modern era, the introduction of the Westward Journey series in 2004 and 2005 brought renewed attention to Jefferson Nickels, and these years produced some notable double dies such as doubling on the piece metal reverse and the infamous 2005 Buffalo nickel with doubled bison legs or tail, and some coins from this era also exhibit distinctive die gouges that appear like spear lines or cuts running across the bison's body, inspiring nicknames such as Spear Bison among collectors. And although these gouges were unintentional metal scratches in the die itself, they created bold raised lines on the actual coins, making them highly visually striking errors. And additional errors include clipped planchets where pieces of the metal blank were cut incorrectly, resulting in crescent-shaped missing segments on the finished coin. And these clips are fascinating because they reveal the planchet cutting process and can show retention of metal flow lines near the clipped area. And off-center Jefferson Nickels are among the most visually dramatic errors of the entire series, where the design may shift anywhere from 5% to over 60% off the planchet, sometimes leaving Jefferson's portrait partially missing or leaving part of the Monticello design hanging near the rim. And the most desirable off-centers are those that remain well-centered enough to keep the date visible, because a dateless off-center coin loses much of its collector value, and broad strikes complement this group by showing a fully expanded rimless coin that was struck outside the collar ring, creating a wide, flat nickel with no defined edge, while double-struck examples, where the coin is struck twice at different angles or in slightly shifted positions, are especially sought after because they display overlapping portraits or duplicated Monticello outlines that dramatically transform the appearance of the coin, and multi-strike coins with significant rotation between strikes have sold for several hundred to several $1,000s depending on severity and preservation, and capped die errors, where a previously struck coin becomes stuck to the die and strikes later coins with a domed impression, also exist in the Jefferson Nickel series, though they are extremely rare, and their ghost-like, deeply distorted surfaces look like the design is melting inward, making them some of the strangest errors collectors can encounter. And with these numerous varieties, doubled dies, off-centers, misaligned strikes, repunched mint marks, late-stage die breaks, clipped planchets, capped dies, and the perpetual hunt for full-step examples across all decades, the Jefferson Nickel series presents endless opportunities for collectors to find valuable coins in circulation, estate collections, or old rolls, and this constant excitement helps explain why the Jefferson Nickel remains one of the most beloved and accessible coin series for both beginners and advanced numismatists. Continuing deeper into the long and complex journey of the Jefferson Nickel, this section expands the story even further by exploring the development of the series through the lens of technological evolution at the U.S. Mint, collector market trends, grading transitions, design refinements, and the rise of modern varieties that continue to keep the series alive for new generations of numismatists. Because even though the Jefferson Nickel began in 1938 as a straightforward 5-cent coin, honoring America's third president and featuring the iconic Monticello mansion, its decades-long production reveals an evolving portrait of American minting practices, changing artistic preferences, variations in strike quality, and unexpected die behaviors that have shaped how collectors understand the series today. And one of the most fascinating aspects of studying these coins is learning how improvements in mint engineering influenced the sharpness of Jefferson's profile and the clarity of Monticello's architectural lines, which can be seen in how early-year coins relied on hand-prepared hubs and punches that introduced more irregularities into dies, while later decades implemented more precise machining processes like computer-guided lathe cutting and automated die polishing systems that attempted to standardize production but still produced their own sets of quirks and anomalies. And examining these transitions allows collectors to pinpoint why certain decades, such as the late 1950s or mid-1980s, are infamous for weak strikes, incomplete details on Jefferson's hair and cheekbone, and especially the difficulty of achieving full step designations on Monticello's staircase. And the rarity of fully defined steps in certain years has created an entire micromarket within the Jefferson Nickel series where even common dates suddenly become trophy pieces if they exhibit perfect step structure, and this is largely due to the intricate relationship between die pressure, planchet hardness, die wear, press calibration, and the mint's constant challenge of balancing speed with quality, because high production demands often force dies to be used far beyond their ideal lifespan, creating the soft, mushy details that plague many dates. But moving further into the historical timeline, the role of the Westward Journey redesigns in 2004 and 2005 represented one of the most significant artistic shifts in the entire series, introducing new portraits of Jefferson, symbolic imagery celebrating exploration, and finally the American bison reverse that recalled the classic buffalo nickel of earlier decades. And while these designs were temporary, they sparked a renewed interest in the nickel denomination, driving collectors to examine both contemporary and older issues more closely. And the change also brought a wave of modern errors, including double dies, misaligned strikes, and die gouges, most famously the spear-like line on the bison nickel, that became some of the most exciting finds of the early 2000s. And although the mint returned to a more traditional portrait of Jefferson in 2006 with a forward-facing design combined with a restored Monticello reverse, the series had already been revitalized, leading to increased role searching, more submissions to grading companies, and a fresh wave of specialists dedicated to cataloging every variety, repunched mint mark, and doubled die across all decades. And speaking of grading companies, the rise of third-party grading services reshaped the landscape of Jefferson nickel collecting by standardizing quality assessment, popularizing labels such as full steps, and creating competitive registry sets where collectors strive to build the highest graded and most complete sets across years and mints. And this competition dramatically increased demand for coins previously overlooked, especially those from the 1960s through 1990s where mint quality fluctuated widely and superb gems were exceptionally hard to come by. And even though millions of nickels were struck yearly, surviving examples with impeccable luster, clean fields, and razor-sharp step detail remain incredibly scarce, pushing auction prices to surprising heights and fueling continuous interest in high-grade modern pieces. And collectors also pay close attention to the relationship between die deterioration and metal flow, particularly in later decades where coins often show signs of fatigue such as die cracks branching across Jefferson's portrait, cuds forming along the rim, and heavy die polishing lines that sometimes erase parts of the steps or Jefferson's jawline. And these die states help collectors understand the life cycle of minting tools and can indicate whether a particular variety or double die occurred early, mid, or late in the die's lifespan, which significantly influences its value. And another major factor shaping the Jefferson Nickel series is the nature of planchet preparation, especially during wartime years when the composition shifted to a copper-silver-manganese alloy to conserve nickel for military purposes. And these wartime alloys behaved differently during striking, creating unique textures, luster patterns, and edge characteristics that specialists can identify instantly. And after the war, when the mint returned to the traditional copper-nickel alloy, additional transitional quirks surfaced as presses and dies adjusted back to the original hardness levels, resulting in unexpected varieties and minor strike differences that today serve as important clues for dating and authenticating coins. And beyond the technical aspects, the series also reflects broader economic moments in U.S. history, such as the coin shortages of the early 1960s that pushed production limits to extremes, the changes in mint mark placement and removal that mirrored shifting minting policies, and the push for more automated processes in later decades that attempted to reduce human error yet still produced new types of anomalies due to machinery vibration, feed system failures, and die installation misalignments. And examining these historical layers gives the Jefferson Nickel a depth that extends far beyond its everyday role as a circulating coin, transforming it into a rich timeline of American minting culture, technological evolution, and artistic interpretation. And as collectors continue uncovering previously undocumented errors, newly recognized doubled dies, subtle repunched mint marks, or rare early die states, the story of the Jefferson Nickel keeps growing. adding new chapters that reinforce why this humble 5-cent piece remains one of the most enjoyable and endlessly fascinating U.S. coins for collectors of all levels, and this ongoing discovery process is what makes the pursuit so rewarding, because even today, with millions of collectors searching through rolls, inheriting old jars of coins, or using magnification to analyze every tiny detail, new surprises continue to emerge, ensuring that the journey of exploring Jefferson Nickels will never truly end. As this story reaches its final stretch, the Jefferson Nickel continues to reveal layers of history, value, rarity, and collector fascination that make it one of the most important and underrated coins in all of American numismatics, because while many people casually use these coins in daily transactions, collectors understand that hidden among millions of common pieces are extraordinary treasures that can be worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars, especially when we look deeply at the most dramatic errors, rarest dates, amazing die varieties, transitional strikes, full strike designations, auction records, and the fascinating ways these coins survived through shifting mint technologies, wartime metal shortages, economic changes, and decades of circulation where that left only a tiny number of high-grade survivors. And when people think about the Jefferson Nickel, they often focus on the wartime silver coins, but the entire series contains sleeper dates that turn into surprises, starting with the hard-to-find 1939 reverse of 1940 variety, which shows a sharper Monticello detail on the steps and pillars, making it rarer and highly valuable in uncirculated condition, while the 1939 D remains one of the most challenging pieces even in mid-range grades because low mintage and poor strike quality leave collectors hunting endlessly for a clean example, and another powerful highlight is the famous 1942 D over horizontal D, one of the most dramatic repunched mint marks ever seen on a Jefferson nickel, where the earlier sideways mint mark remains visible beneath the final upright D, and collectors chase this variety because even moderately circulated pieces can approach significant prices, while high-grade examples regularly command strong bids at auction. And then we approach the wartime silver years, where the big mint mark above Monticello makes these coins instantly recognizable, but within this era lie incredible rarities like the 1943 2 over date, which displays a bold underlying 2 beneath the 3, making it one of the most valuable coins in the entire Jefferson series, especially in full step condition where prices can skyrocket into 5-figure territory. And speaking of full steps, collectors know how extremely rare it is to find early and mid-20th century Jefferson Nickels with sharp, complete Monticello steps because strike quality was inconsistent and the design made this feature hard to achieve, so when full step examples appear in high grades from years like 1950, 1953, 1960, or 1964, the value rises dramatically, and the legendary 1950 D with its lowest mintage of the entire series becomes a star of the hobby even though many were saved, because high-grade full-step pieces remain genuinely scarce and sell for big money, proving that rarity is more than mintage, its survival in pristine condition. And as we continue into the 1960s, we find one of the most famous double dies of all American coinage, the 1964 SMS nickel, part of the mysterious special mint set coins believed to have been created for internal testing or possibly VIP presentation, and this coin is so rare that only a handful exist, making it an ultra-elite treasure worth many thousands of dollars whenever it appears at auction. But the true depth of the Jefferson Nickel's appeal is seen through the wide range of errors produced across decades, including off-center strikes where parts of the design are missing, broad strikes that create oversized flattened coins, clipped planchets where manufacturing mistakes cause crescent-shaped gaps, and die cracks that travel across Jefferson's portrait like lightning, giving collectors unique one-of-a-kind pieces, while double-struck coins show multiple images overlapping, and coins struck on the wrong planchet, such as Jefferson designs accidentally struck on 1-cent bronze or dime planchets, become some of the most dramatic and valuable errors because they break all expectations, especially when the coin retains a strong strike or displays clear dual design elements. And as mint processes evolved into the 1970s, 1980s, and modern years, high-grade nickels with full steps continue to dominate the premium market because these coins prove how elusive perfect strikes truly are, and in recent years examples graded MS 67 or MS 68 with full steps have brought astonishing prices due to their rarity, reminding collectors that even modern coins can hold extraordinary value. And reflecting on all of this, the Jefferson nickel becomes more than just a piece of metal. It is a bridge between eras, a witness to history, a snapshot of America's evolving minting technology, and a coin that hides tremendous value behind a very ordinary face, which is why collectors around the world continue to study, search, and treasure these coins, knowing that the next great discovery may still be sitting unnoticed in a jar, a drawer, or a pocket, waiting for someone with knowledge and curiosity to uncover it. And that endless sense of possibility is what keeps the Jefferson nickel alive in the world of numismatics, inspiring new collectors every year to look closely, pay attention, and appreciate the extraordinary hidden inside what once seemed ordinary, making this one of the most rewarding coins to explore and collect in the entire hobby. And with that journey into its rarities, errors, surprises, and enduring legacy, we close this chapter with gratitude for the extraordinary world of coin collecting and the stories these small pieces of metal continue to tell. Thanks for watching.